What's going on, sports fans? This is Big Sexy here. We got week 3 of Sexy Picks brought to you by KFR Sportscast. So let's get right into it. All right. Now we have the Miami Dolphins going into Buffalo and playing the Buffalo Bills on Thursday night. The Buffalo Bills are looking real strong. Another impressive win over the Jets last week. Their defense looked pretty solid. So, and then on the other side of the coin, Miami, they're just going to be struggling all year long. It's funny. A good friend of mine who's a Dolphins fan sent me a message of a comment or a post or something like that. It said, "I think Dolphins fans need to have a fans only meeting." I thought that was pretty funny. So I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills in this one. I don't even think it's going to be close. Give me the Buffalo Bills by at least 2 scores. All right, and then we got the Cincinnati Bengals going into Minnesota, playing the Minnesota Vikings. Joe Burrow is out for at least 3 months with a turf toe. He's going to have surgery on it. So the Bengals are going to have to figure out what they're doing at quarterback. They're going to keep Jake Browning, or if they're going to try and trade for somebody like, I've heard rumbles of like Jameis Winston, some other backup quarterbacks around the league, but we'll have to see what we'll see what they do. And then Minnesota, JJ McCarthy definitely looked a little bit more down to earth last week as far as him in his first full year starting. So they got some growing pains that they got to go through. So I'm going to take, this is a tough one to pick because of, in the state of how both teams are. I think I'm going to I'm going to reluctantly pick Minnesota here. I think it's going to be one of those games where it's very low scoring and not a lot of exciting things happening. So give me Minnesota by 3. All right, we got the Houston Texans going into Jacksonville and playing the Jacksonville Jaguars. So these teams are still trying to find their footing in the season. Houston Texans offense just looks flat. I don't know whether it's just the offensive line, or maybe C.J. Stroud isn't all he's hyped up to be. I don't know what it is, but they just didn't look good at all on offense. But their defense looked really solid. For most of the game against Tampa. With the exception of the end of the game there. But, their defense looked pretty solid. Then you got, Jacksonville. They've been competitive in both of the games that they've played. Hasn't really resulted in any wins, but, they're still trying to, find their footing there with their new head coach. So I'm going to take Jacksonville because they're at home. Give me Jacksonville by 3. All right. Next, we got the Indianapolis Colts going into Tennessee and playing the Titans. Ladies and gentlemen, are we at the point where Daniel Jones is an MVP frontrunner right now? It's crazy to hear those words come out of my mouth, and it's reluctantly sad to see this happening with another team, but here we are. Wish we could have gotten that production out of him in New York, or we wouldn't be in the position that we're in today. But I think the Colts are going to start the season 3-0 here. I don't see Tennessee beating them with how well they've been playing. So give me the Colts here. Give me the Colts, and expect Daniel Jones to have another big day against this defense. So give me the Colts. All right, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers going into New England and playing the New England Patriots. Pittsburgh is, they had a pretty big wake up call last week. Against the Seahawks. Now, mind you, the Seahawks defense is really good. they got a lot of really good players on that defense. But, this is what they're dealing with, having a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers at quarterback and, their, defense not really playing up to par. The special teams not really playing up to par. And then on the other side of it, this Patriots team is looking pretty damn well coached, under Mike Vrabel. He's doing a really solid job with those guys over there. I think the Patriots win this game. Their defense is pretty solid. I like the New England to beat Pittsburgh at home. So give me the Patriots. All right. And then we got the Green Bay Packers going into Cleveland to play the Cleveland Browns. The Packers, are one of those teams that are looking like to be like the top 3 teams in the league right now. Offense firing on all cylinders, defense is firing on all cylinders. Micah Parsons seems to complement everybody else on that defense very well. I don't see a world in where Cleveland wins this game, at least not in this universe. So give me the Packers here by at least a couple scores. All right, we got the LA Rams going into Philadelphia and playing the Philadelphia Eagles. A lot of outcry for after watching this Eagles team play Kansas City last week and literally spamming the tush push. And then there was some questionable calls. Film showed that the Eagles obviously, jumped before the snap, which should have been a false start. Refs didn't call it, which is weird to think about that, the refs don't call in favor of the Chiefs, but it happened. And, so there's been a lot of outcry in the media for the tush push to be banned, and a lot of the discussions from the off season where they should have banned it, the people that are in support of getting rid of it were crying out to get rid of it again. So the Eagles kind of got that going for them, but as long as it's still legal, they're still going to run it. So we got to at least deal with it for the rest of the season. In those short yardage situations, that play is literally unstoppable for them. It is what it is. And then, the Rams have been looking pretty solid this year so far. Matt Stafford still doing his thing. The addition of Devontae Adams seems to be a good one for them. I still think I want to pick the Rams here just because I don't want to root for the Eagles, but I'm going to pick the Eagles here. They're playing at home. It pains me to say this, but I do think that they have the better overall team. So give me the Eagles in this one. All right. And then we got the New York Jets going into Tampa and playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa with some late game heroics last week, pulled it out against Houston on Monday night. That Igbuka kid is looking really solid. A lot of the people that, picked him up in fantasy are reaping the benefits for that. And, I think that, Tampa it's their division to lose. It's their division to lose again. I think the Falcons could keep, at least it competitive and, give them a run for their money. But I feel as though Tampa's gonna win the division again this year. Then the Jets kind of, looked flat against the Bills last week. But, I think that's more credit to the Bills defense than anything. But yeah, from versus like a week prior, Justin Fields was looking, fabulous out there. And he just kind of showed the old Justin Fields again. I think Tampa is going to win this game. This is another one where I don't see a universe that the Jets win this football game. So give me Tampa here by 3. All right, next we got the Las Vegas Raiders going into Washington and playing the Washington Commanders. Yeah, so we're gonna have to see what's going on with Jaden Daniels here. It's all gonna come down to what's gonna happen with him. I think it's more or less going to be going to be contingent on him. But then again, I mean, just because of the rest of their roster and the way that the Raiders looked on Monday night out there, Geno Smith did not look good at all Monday night against the Chargers. So I think even without Jaden Daniels, I think Washington still wins this game. So give me Washington. All right, we got the Atlanta Falcons going into Carolina to play the Carolina Panthers. I think that and this game is going to close up our our early window of football here. Man, that Falcons defense is looking pretty solid, isn't it? Man, I tell you, they got a lot of young pieces on that defense. All the rookies that they drafted on that side of the ball performed well. The veterans are playing solid. The defense looked pretty good. Yes, it was against the Minnesota Vikings, but at times even against Tampa, they looked all right. They kept them in the game. That last game that they played, and then they won. They won against Minnesota there because of their defense. Now, the Panthers have still got a lot of things to figure out. It seems like they're kind of, floundering around and not really living up to their potential. I think that they definitely made the wrong move in making that huge trade to get the number one overall pick that year. And, Bryce Young is looking like not to be worth it. So they got a lot to figure out. So I am going to take the Atlanta Falcons on the road here. Give me the Falcons by like 10. All right, we got the Denver Broncos going into Los Angeles to play the Los Angeles Chargers. I like this Chargers team this year. I really like this Chargers team. I think that they, right now, they're looking like they could win the division this year. I mean, I know it's only 2 weeks, and the Kansas City Chiefs, as long as that number 15 is playing quarterback for them, still have a shot, but I don't know, man. It just so far, it looks like they're head and shoulders above anybody else in that division right now. And then Denver, lost a nail biter last week. They're right there as well. I still feel even in that loss, they're still one of the better teams in that division. So I'm gonna take the Chargers in this one at home. Give me the Los Angeles Chargers. All right, we got the New Orleans Saints going into Seattle and playing the Seattle Seahawks. As bad as the Saints roster looks on paper, they played some competitive football the past couple of weeks. I got to give it to them. They got Spencer Rattler at quarterback. But they're playing solid football. Even in losing efforts, they're still playing solid. So, I think they could keep this game competitive. But it's going to be tough going into Seattle and playing in front of the 12th man. Especially with how good that defense is looking over there. So I'm going to take the Seahawks in this game, but I expect it to be competitive. So give me the Seahawks by like 7. All right, we got the Dallas Cowboys going into Chicago and playing the Chicago Bears. Yeah, the Bears are gonna bear, and while they're bearing, it's gonna be unbearable. Yeah, I know there was a lot of puns in there, but it just kind of sums up what the Bears have looked like so far. Week 1 Monday night they get a huge lead and then cough it up to JJ McCarthy, and then you go see JJ McCarthy play next week and he looks abysmal out there. I just think that they got a lot of figuring out to do with what they're gonna do. you know, they got absolutely mauled by the Lions last week. And I've always been a non Caleb Williams supporter. I don't think Caleb Williams is it was worth the number one overall pick in my eyes. That's just my opinion. But Dallas, their offense looked good against the Giants last week, but I think that was more a test to how bad, the Giants' defensive play calling was, and I'll get into that a little bit later on, or maybe I'll do a sexy time episode. Who knows? Talking about the Giants, but back to Dallas. I think it was really a really bad defensive game for both teams last week. And with that being said, though, I mean, the offense, still looked good, and it doesn't feel like they missed a beat really. With changing around some of their pieces, they added George Pickens, they added Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams has been really solid for them so far. Over the past 2 weeks, I think they got a Zeke like talent in that kid. For a fraction of the price. He runs the ball, very similar style to how Zeke used to run it down there. So I'm going to take the Cowboys in this game. I just have no faith that the Bears are going to, close out a win. And yeah, I even with how bad the Cowboys defenses looked, I still think that the Cowboys are going to win this game against the Bears. So, all right. Next game we got is the Arizona Cardinals going into San Francisco and playing the San Francisco 49ers. Yeah, I really don't have too much of an opinion about this game. The only thing that you might have to watch out for is Mac Jones going to play again, and if Mac Jones plays, does he, perform as well as he did last week? And then the other side of the coin, I think Arizona, still trying to, figure out if they're a good team or not. Week one they had a good week, and then week two was not so good. So it's, they're kind of like, what are we doing? What's our identity type deal where, San Fran is just, plug and play, next guy up type scenario, still trying to win football games. I'm going to take the Niners in this game. Give me the Niners by like 3. All right, now we have the Sunday night football matchup. Why this game is prime time? I don't know. Probably solely because Patrick Mahomes is playing in near New York City. I don't know. Don't shoot me. I'm just a messenger. So Kansas City's going into the Meadowlands playing the New York Giants. Battle of the 0-2 teams. At this point, I would have not expected Kansas City to be 0-2. 1-1 maybe. 0-2, I would have never thought. The Chiefs have not looked good. They have not looked good. They don't look like a Super Bowl contender so far. It's crazy to say that right now, but they have not looked good. Travis Kelce, I think, age is starting to catch up to him a little bit. He's not playing as well as he once did. Maybe it's age, maybe it's, him being too distracted by Taylor Swift. Who knows? But it's not looking like the Travis Kelce of old. And the Giants, the offense, surprised me in a lot of ways. Yes, I just said that, Dallas's defense looked abysmal. But, even in games, in the past that the Giants have went up against abysmal defenses, they've made those abysmal defenses look like, the 85 Bears. So for them to go up in Dallas and put up 37 points, and for Russell Wilson to go into Dallas and throw a career high at this stage in his career, in a sense, I was proud. I was proud of how this team played on offense. Defense, the pass rush looked good, but I am just sickened by the play calling. Especially like we go up. 25 seconds left in the fourth quarter. And they only got to go like 30, they only got to go up the field 30 yards to get in the field goal range. And you play this soft shell, drop back like 12, 13 yard deep zone, giving them all the underneath and they had 3 timeouts left. I just don't understand why it was so conservative at that point, knowing that they have Brandon Aubrey over there, who's literally the best kicker in football right now, and drilled a 64-yarder at the end of regulation to send it into overtime. I just don't understand it. I don't understand it, why you would play that soft shell zone and not lean on the pass rush that had been doing well for you all day long. Yes, Dallas still put up 34 points, but the pressure caused the lone turnover in regulation. It's a fact. Brian Burns was getting to the quarterback. Thibodeau was getting to the quarterback. Carter was in there on a couple plays. Dexter Lawrence was plugging up the middle. Those guys, those guys should have been in the game, and you should have been leaning on those guys at the end. At the end, you need your best players out there to put your team in the best position to win football games. And so far, Shane Bowen has not done that. He has not done that. So for this game in particular, it's tough to call because both of these teams have to show me something. Now the Giants offense has showed me something last week. Malik Neighbors having a big day, Wan'Dale Robinson having a big day. But we'll see. The Chiefs defense is a little bit more stout than the Cowboys is right now. So this is going to be a real test for that offense. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and pick my Giants to maybe get their first win of the season. Do I think Kansas City is going to win this game? Probably, but I'm hopefully optimistic after the way we looked on offense last week. So give me the Giants this week. All right, so we're going. Then we got our Monday night matchup. We got the Detroit Lions going into Baltimore and playing the Baltimore Ravens. Both teams look really solid, bouncing back from a loss the week previous. So this is going to be a fight, a heavyweight fight. Two teams looking to be in contention for the Super Bowl. This is prime Monday Night Football stuff right here. I like this game a lot. I think it's going to be very entertaining. I'm going to take Baltimore at home. I know I'm picking against the Lions. Probably my, one of my top 3, favorite teams to watch right now. I'm going to pick against them. I'm going to take Baltimore here. Give me the Ravens by 3. So that has been, our week 3 sexy picks here. Leave a comment if you'd like. Let me know how you think my picks went, or if you disagree totally with every single one of my picks, tell me I suck. I don't know, but just leave a comment. It helps the video out. Give a thumbs up, share it with your friends, subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. And I will see you back here next week for week 4, ladies and gentlemen. This has been Big Sexy with KFR Sportscast. Big Sexy out.